Hello again and welcome back to our course on Access 2013 Advanced. In this section we're going to take a look at customizing the ribbon. Now, with your existing knowledge of Access 2013, I assume that you're familiar with customizing the quick access toolbar, and to some extent this provides you with much of what you need to know to customize the ribbon. But there are a few additional points in relation to the ribbon which I think it's important for you to understand. The other point is that at this point in the course, where you've learnt something about macros and we're about to launch ourselves into VBA programming, you're going to find the ability to customize both the quick access toolbar and the ribbon increasingly useful. So here's a quick refresher on the quick access toolbar. It's at the top left of the screen there. One of the options is customize quick access toolbar, the button right at the right end there. The buttons that are already available on the quick access toolbar can be enabled and disabled by ticking here. You have the option right at the bottom of showing the quick access toolbar below the ribbon. In this particular case, of course, we're not showing the ribbon, so that would make a terrific amount of difference. Sometimes people prefer to show the quick access toolbar below the ribbon, because if they're doing a very repetitive set of tasks using the quick access toolbar, it actually reduces the amount of movement of the mouse to access the quick access toolbar, and also decreases the chance of clicking on something on the ribbon by accident when you're sort of reaching up for the quick access toolbar. But to customize the quick access toolbar, we click on More Commands, and then it's pretty straightforward. We have this model, we have a list of available commands on the left, and on the right we have the list of the ones that are actually in the quick access toolbar. You use the two buttons in the middle to add commands and to remove commands. The bottom right we have a reset button. Click on the drop down. We can reset just the quick access toolbar, or we can reset all customizations. That includes any customization of the ribbon. And you also have an option to import and export customizations, which you can use so that you can actually either transfer your ribbon, say, to other users so that they can have the same ribbon set up as you. And it's also very useful if you're distributing an Access application and you've set up either a specific ribbon or two, or maybe in some way rearranged the existing ribbon, and you really want the users of your database application to use the ribbon that you've designed specifically for it. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but for the moment I'm going to concentrate on actually customizing the ribbon itself. Given that you may well want to customize the ribbon to the requirements of your Access applications, I want to cover a little bit about the ribbon. It was introduced in Access 2007, and the ability to customize it was introduced in the 2010 version of Access. The way that it works is just about the same as the other main components of Office 2013. Obviously the ribbons between the components aren't really interchangeable, because the sorts of commands that you have here, for example on the Create tab in Access, are completely irrelevant to something like PowerPoint or Word. Now, there are certainly some commands like font commands and so on that you'll find in all of the components, but many of them you won't. The ribbon is hierarchical in nature. At the top level you have the ribbon itself. The ribbon is in turn broken down into tabs. On each tab you have a number of groups, and within the groups you have a number of controls. Now, the nature of the controls varies hugely. If I, for instance, with this currently displayed form, if I go into the Home tab, I can see that I have a particular button there, which is just a command button, delete, but there's a little right hand drop down there as well, which gives them the option of doing a delete or a delete record. Now, this sort of button is quite a common type of button in Access 2013. It's a split button where one part of it does one thing, one part of it does another. Very often the specific one, such as the delete here, is a subset of the list associated with the other part, and split buttons can be vertically split or horizontally split. You then have various other options. You have menus, like the menu here. Some of the options are grayed out because they can't be executed at the moment. Some of them are available. And then you have other buttons like the Find button that will bring up a dialog. Now we're going to customize this particular ribbon, not to fulfill a specific purpose, but I just want to show you how it's done. And I want to point out one or two important things about this that you need to be aware of before you start. First of all, when you customize the ribbon, the customization applies to the machine on which you have performed the customization, or perhaps I should say the installation of Access on which you've performed the customization. If we customize this ribbon here and then just deliver an Access database to somebody else, they will not get that customization. In order for them to get the ribbon customization, we would need to provide them with an exported version of the customized ribbon. The second important point is that the default ribbon, the one that you get with Access 2013 as the default, you cannot add or remove tabs from it. You can hide tabs, and you have contextual tabs, tabs that only appear in certain situations, but you can't actually delete, say, the Home tab or the Create tab. You can only hide it. You also cannot delete individual commands from groups. So let's suppose that I wanted to customize the default ribbon here, and say I wanted the Sort and Filter group to be pretty much as it is here, but without that advanced button. Now you cannot just remove that advanced button. What I would have to do is to remove the whole of the Sort and Filter group and then add a custom group with each of the buttons except the advanced button. One other point that I know confuses and frustrates people: you cannot add individual controls directly to tabs. Controls must be in groups. Now you can have groups with single controls in them. So for instance, here on the Home tab I've got this Views group that's got this View button in it. It's actually a split button. So there's absolutely no problem having a group with a single control in it, but you cannot add a control directly to a tab. It must be in a group. So let's set about customizing this current ribbon. Just right click somewhere on the ribbon, gives us the option to customize the ribbon. That takes us into the relevant Access options page, Customize Ribbon. And if you look at the list of main tabs on the right, you can see currently Home is visible, Create, External Data, Database Tools. Some of the others are context sensitive, and if you click on the Tool tabs, you see the tool tabs that will appear in certain situations. So for instance, Form Layout Tools, when you're in Form Layout mode, there are 3 more tabs there: Design, Arrange, Format. If you're in Report Design, 4 more there: Design, Arrange, Format, Page Setup. I assume that you're familiar with these tabs, but clearly these can be customized and added to as well. Let's just go back to the main tabs. Let's suppose that you wanted to hide the External Data tab. Remember, you can't delete it, but you can hide it. So if I uncheck it, watch what happens if I click on OK. I get this message: you must close and reopen the current database for the specified option to take effect. Sometimes that's not quite true. I think you'll find if I click on OK here that I don't have to close and reopen the database. In fact, you can see the External Data tab just disappeared. So that's hiding one of the tabs. Let's now customize one of the tabs. So I'm looking at the Home tab here, which has got the Find group on it. I'm going to move the Find group somewhere else. I'm going to create a new tab, and on that tab I'm going to create a couple of groups with a couple of controls in each, the ones I'm going to use when I'm generally working on this database. Now obviously exactly which controls, which groups, which tabs will be very much dependent on the database that you're working on. So first of all, let me go to the Home tab and choose that Find group, and if I want to move it to one of the other tabs, let's suppose I want to put it on the Database Tools tab, all I need to do is select it and then use the down arrow there and I'm going to put it between Tools and Macro. Click on OK, see how that looks. Database Tools, and between tools and macro I've now got the find group. So that's pretty straightforward. Now let me create my new tab. I'm going to call it Toby. I'm going to put two groups on it. One group will contain some controls related to queries, and the other group will contain some controls related to VBA code. So first of all, new tab. The new tab control is down here. Note that when I click on new tab, a new tab is created below the tab that I had selected in the right hand list before. And not only do I get a new tab that called new tab with the word custom after it, but it automatically gets a new custom group as well. The idea of that is that if you're creating a tab, you're going to need a group on it as well in order to put any controls on it. So Access 2013 quite helpfully does both jobs for you. Let's start by renaming the tab. Select the tab, click the rename button, and I'm just going to call it Toby. Now let me rename that new group as well. Note I can use the contextual flyout menu on the right there. So that's my first group called queries. And then again, if I right click on there again, I can add another new group, and the second new group is going to be called code. So let me rename that. Click on OK. And now for each of those groups I need to add some controls. It needs to contain two controls related to queries. If I look down the list of popular commands, I can't find those query commands there. So I'm going to choose instead all commands. And then I'm going to go down to the query area. And we have Query Wizard, which is one of them. Notice how it appears in the selected group on the right. And then the other one that I want is Query Design. I'm going to add that as well. And then on the code group, I'm going to put Module and Visual Basic. So let's go back to find Module. There it is. And then Visual Basic is there. Add. OK. Usual warning. There's my Toby tab, and there are my two groups. I've got a queries group with Query Wizard and Query Design in it, and a code group with Module and Visual Basic in. So let's suppose that you're actually happy with this arrangement of the ribbon for the users that are going to be using your database, and your custom ribbon you're quite happy with. At this point you can click down here on the Import Export button, click on Export All Customizations, and export that file with the extension .exported.ui, maybe with a more appropriate name, in this case movies database .exported.ui, and that's the exported ribbon that you could use to import into client systems. Your customer systems are going to be using this database, and that's the ribbon that you want them to work with while they're working on your database. So that's how to customize, that's how to export it. When you want to revert everything back to the way it was, it's pretty straightforward. Just click down here on Reset, reset all customizations. You get a warning. Click on Yes, click on OK, and everything is back the way it was before. Now I'd just like to talk about one other thing briefly before we move on. If you work on a number of different Access databases, perhaps you're developing them for different clients, or you're making your own databases for your own use, you may well need to switch between custom ribbons. If, as is often the case, your users have quite cut down versions of a ribbon when they're using your Access databases, you may have very different ribbons for different Access databases, and of course a very different ribbon that you use yourself when you're developing the databases than the ribbon that you let customers use when they're actually using your Access databases. So these .exported.ui types of files, which are actually a type of XML file, you may have many of them, and you may need to regularly import and export them when you've created a new one, and when you're about to go back to working on a particular database and you need to go back to the custom ribbon that you use when you're working on that database. So most people that are developing a number of Access databases tend to have a large number of custom ribbons that they switch between. So it's well worth getting used to exporting these, importing these, and knowing all the ways of customizing the ribbon. So that's it on customizing the ribbon in Access 2013. I'll see you in the next section.